Before starting this video, I wanted to point out a few things. I actually started the voiceover to this like a couple of months back, and let's just say a bunch of things has happened since then. I mean, world-changing things. And in the state of New York, I'm actually considered an essential worker, so while many people weren't working, I was actually busier than ever. So I couldn't quite get around to editing or even uploading my videos. So for that, I apologize. That being said, I'm not the only one that has been affected by this. Everyone has been affected by this. And the movie industry is no different. I mean, movies have been pushed back, movies have been canceled, movies have even been straight for streaming. So right now, I don't even know what's the future to the New Mutants. So please take what I say with a grain of salt, because at the time, they made sense for me. And to tell you the truth, they still make sense to me. So yeah. With that being said, here's why I think the New Mutants may just be key to introducing the X-Men. Okay, let's go over what it is we know about the New Mutants. We know that the main villain in the movie is going to be the Demon Bear, and it looks like Dr. Cecilia Reyes will be a threat as well. I mean, it remains to be seen if that's really the case though. In the comics, she's actually one of the good guys and has even joined the X-Men in the past. The other characters in the movie will be Sunspot, Danielle Moonstar, Cannonball, Wolfsbane, and Magik. Now, Magik is where it gets particularly interesting, and why it may be possible to connect this universe with the MCU. In the comics, Magik is introduced as Illyana Rasputin, the little sister of the X-Man Colossus, and made her first appearance in the pages of Giant Size X-Men #1. So she's actually been around for a while, making her debut alongside the likes of Colossus, Storm, and Nightcrawler. And although she was a young girl when she first appeared, it didn't take long for her to age drastically. And this happened after she was basically kidnapped by Belasco, who happens to be the ruler of the Limbo Dimension, as well as being trapped there. Now, Belasco's plan is to use Illyana in order to open a gateway for the Elder Gods and free himself. But that could only happen by filling the Beatrix medallion with 5 bloodstones, and the bloodstones are created by corrupting Illyana's soul. The X-Men go in to save her, but time and space works differently here, and 2 separate but equally valid outcomes happen. In one of them, the X-Men didn't get to save her, and she is now trapped, and this is the Magik that we know. But in the other, they do save her, but end up being trapped in that dimension. And because again, time and space works differently in Limbo, they've actually been trapped in there for years, slowly getting tortured and killed by Belasco and his minions during this time. And the stuff that happens to these alternate X-Men is pretty gruesome. So 2 realities are in play here. Belasco begins corrupting Illyana's soul and tethers her to him fairly quickly after our reality's X-Men first failed to rescue her. However, she gets rescued by the alternate versions of Storm and Shadowcat. Throughout the years in Limbo, Storm has become a pretty capable sorceress, and so during the next couple of years, Magik actually receives tutelage from these alternate versions of Storm and Shadowcat, with Storm teaching her white magic and Shadowcat teaching her hand-to-hand combat. So yeah, she's pretty much learning how to be a badass right now. And thanks to Belasco, Shadowcat has a more feline appearance and is in a constant fight to control her animal side. After an attempt at escaping Limbo with Shadowcat failed, Belasco will once again gain control of Illyana and set to work in further corrupting her soul by teaching her black magic. And this goes on for years. And although she was loving it, there still remains some humanity in her, and she would eventually plot to overthrow Belasco. And she does this by using a combination of manifesting her soul sword, which is basically the physical manifestation of her soul, and using her mutant powers, which had just recently emerged. After defeating Belasco, she becomes the new ruler of Limbo, and then uses her mutant powers to teleport back to Earth after spending 8 years in what is basically hell, while only a few minutes has been spent in this reality. And this is when she joins the New Mutants. Now, Magik's mutant powers are a bit interesting. It essentially allows her to teleport through time and space by using the Limbo Dimension as a midpoint. Now remember, the Limbo Dimension had 2 universes merged into one during the time that she was there, with the reality of the X-Men that succeeded in saving her merged with the reality of the X-Men that couldn't manage to save her. So that means that Magik can potentially teleport into different universes. This is also mentioned in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, This storyline was created when Legion, who happens to be Professor X's son, went back in time in order to achieve his father's dream by trying to kill Magneto. He accidentally ends up killing his own father though, and this ends up making a universe where Magneto is now leader of the X-Men and Apocalypse pretty much rules the world. I won't go too into it, but let me know in the comments if you want a video done on the Age of Apocalypse. Anyway, Illyana Rasputin was essential in order to fix that timeline. Without her, they would have never had the ability to fix or rewrite reality. What I'm getting at is that the idea of a multiverse is nothing new with Magik. She was brought up with alternate versions of Shadowcat and Storm, so her origin is pretty much rooted with the multiverse. And there's one character in the MCU that we already know will have a movie with the word multiverse in it, and that's Doctor Strange. And in the comics, Magik and Doctor Strange actually have quite a big connection to each other. Thanks to all the lessons she learned in Limbo, Magik is a very capable sorceress. In fact, she's known as the Sorceress Supreme in Limbo, and has even taken the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme in a couple of alternate Earths, with the most recent example being in Doctor Strange The End. And spoiler alert, this issue deals with, well, the end of Doctor Strange. But before he dies, he ends up making Magik his successor as Sorcerer Supreme. And although this story was a multiverse story and does not take place in the 616, it happened pretty recently. Sure, they could have done this story to hype up the New Mutants as well as Doctor Strange, but it was done suspiciously close to the New Mutants theatrical release. I think that Marvel may be privy to some kind of information that we don't know about. And let's face it, I love Stephen Cumberbatch, but sooner or later his time as Doctor Strange will come to an end, and setting up his successor will make a lot of sense. Magik is no slouch when it comes to sorcery, and throughout the years she's had many powerful teachers, with Doctor Strange being included among them. Having studied under him in order to better control the corruption that was growing inside of her. And when Doctor Strange needed teachers for his Strange Academy, one of the people that he first called upon was Magik. The Strange Academy is kinda like Hogwarts from Harry Potter. And again, this issue is also fairly recent. It's almost like Marvel wants to push their relationship on us. Scarlet Witch being one of the teachers is a bit fishy too, as we know that she will play a big part in the Doctor Strange sequel, as well as her own series WandaVision dealing with the multiverse too. But what I found really interesting was an interview done by Entertainment Weekly with Josh Boone, the director of the New Mutants. When asked if his vision was what we were gonna get to see, he said that the movie was gonna be in its entirety except for an end credit scene that would have had Antonio Banderas. And I gotta admit, that sounds cool as heck. But what he said kinda piqued my interest. He said, and I quote, "We had always planned to make a tag at the end of the movie that introduced the villain for the next movie. We even had an actor cast. But because of the merger and because Marvel owns X-Men now and is going to do their own thing, there was no reason to go shoot it." Now I may be reading too much into that quote, but when he said Marvel owns X-Men now and is going to do their own thing, it makes me think that Marvel told them, hey, don't worry about the end credit scene. We got this. And that they may already have an end credit scene planned that may tie the New Mutants with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. What I think may happen is that the idea of the multiverse will start in the New Mutants end credit scene, get more fleshed out during the WandaVision series, and then end in Doctor Strange when absolute madness is going on in the multiverse, and in an attempt to fix it, fragments of other universes make it to the MCU, creating a literal doorway for mutants to now be introduced. But what can connect these two universes? I mean, there's an obvious connection with Magik and Doctor Strange, but is there anything else? Well, this next connection might be a little reaching, but it's all I could come up with, and it deals with the villains of both the New Mutants and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. In Doctor Strange, all arrows point to Nightmare being the villain, but who knows, the villain may actually end up being the Scarlet Witch. Nightmare was Doctor Strange's very first enemy, as well as being the ruler of the Dream Dimension. He is able to draw power from the subconscious minds of the tormented humans that are brought there during their sleep. And yeah, he seems to have a lot of similarities with Freddy Krueger. In fact, Doctor Strange is supposedly going to have horror elements to it, making it a one of a kind in the MCU. Now, the subconscious mind is a very powerful thing, and if any dimension was able to link the inhabitants of the multiverse, I would think that the dream dimension would perhaps be one of them, which is why the sequel will be called Multiverse of Madness. And this now brings up the enemy that we know is going to be in the New Mutants. The Demon Bear draws his power from negative human emotion and first appears in Danielle Moonstar's dreams, haunting her about the death of her parents. Now, both enemies are pretty similar, with both drawing their powers from humans, as well as having a thing for attacking their enemies through their nightmares. Again, this might be a stretch, but perhaps the Demon Bear either works for Nightmare or he is Nightmare, only that he's the New Mutants universe's version of him. And the end credit scene could perhaps easily connect this universe with the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Again, it's a bit of a stretch, but it would kinda make sense. The New Mutants kinda got a horror feel to it, and Doctor Strange is supposedly going for this same feel. Maybe their enemies are more alike than previously thought. But anyway, thanks for listening. Please subscribe and comment down below what you guys think. Is there gonna be a connection with Doctor Strange? Do you think New Mutants will be any good? I'm personally excited to see it. It's the last movie of the Fox era, and although there's been a few bumps on the road, it was still a good ride while it lasted. My name is Ron from Comics and Stuff, and I'll check you guys next time.